I know we did an intro at the top. Let's again go around the room, do a quick, quickly give us some information on what you're working on. The first one on my line is Kari. So.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Kari Primiano, and I'm really excited to join this discussion today. I'm currently a product solutions engineer at New Light Technologies, where I am focused on making available a decision support system called Impact. It's a geospatial platform that helps decision makers respond to disasters by providing real-time and actionable insights. It's been exciting to see how geospatial technology can play a really critical role in disaster management. So I'm looking forward to sharing some of what I've learned through that process today.
Excellent. Thank you. Michael, you're next up on my screen.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Michael Macarilla. I'm a public safety account executive at Esri. And what that means is I work with our account managers at the state and local government level with all things public safety. I have a background. I was with the state police in Vermont for about 27 years, held a number of assignments, and then worked in the private sector for a little bit before coming to Esri to do this. So I'm going to be enjoying being here, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thanks. We're glad you're here. Brian Maddox, you are next on my screen.
Hello, I'm Brian Maddox. I'm probably the smallest business here today. I am a consultant. I work for various different companies for anything from combining AI with computer vision or large language models or deep learning or various things like that.
Excellent. Thank you. Tom Moran, you are next.
Thank you, Bill. I'm Tom Moran. I am INCATech's GIS practice lead. And so what that means is oversee all of our program execution on spatially related projects, big background in geography, all across mostly federal government with the focus probably on emergency management, and then say probably more recently spatial accessibility public services. So we support work over at NTIA and do a good bit of geospatial work within product stewardship space. So happy to be here.
Next up on my screen is Dave Stepp.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Dave Stepp here. I am the Associate Director of Federal Connected Solutions over here at Verizon. What that translates to is I oversee all technical selling for all of our civilian agencies, DoD and NatSec. So think things like more complex mobile broadband, fixed wireless access, of course, IoT, and that's what we do here.
Excellent. Thank you. And last would be Jing Wu.
Hey there, everyone. My name is Jing Wu. Sometimes I'm known in my industries as the geospatial pharmacist because I wear 5 main hats. One of them clinically being a pharmacist. I've had a big career in public health. I'm located in DC with all of you, and I came here to do a residency in association management. So this is definitely an association mecca. But I also wear a patient advocacy hat where I ran a nonprofit a while ago, primarily focused on brain injury and stroke because I am a severe traumatic brain injury survivor with a rare memory condition. And then finally, I wear a geospatial hat. I used to work for Esri, so I was kind of interesting. I was on the health team during COVID. Yeah, I was one of those people who was rung through the wire during a global pandemic. But then I evolved on to work for an association focused on older adults and geriatrics. And then now I still consult for the World Health Organization in their Geospatial Center for Health. So there's been a lot of Geo Week stuff happening today, including actually a lesson with Esri this morning that we did on Experience Builder. But then I also am launching an initiative called the Maps for Health Collaborative. So really about bringing together health professionals and geographers in the healthcare space. It's emerging for sure. And I think the last panel really touched on how if we don't get a stronghold in certain industries, it could get really wayward really fast. And I definitely saw that during COVID when I was one of the people who was helping, I suppose, to evangelize geospatial technology and health. But now it's interesting to see seeds that are planted where they are today. I'm like, holy smokes, if we don't mingle this, we're probably going to get in a little bit of trouble, similar to how some other industries have sort of evolved. So I'm happy to be here and appreciate the invitation.
Good, good. We're glad to have you here, and keep your mic on because the first question is coming to you. So pretty much I'm going to run through the same set of questions I did for the last panel, but there was one I didn't get to. And so I actually want to start with that. And Jing, I think you're the perfect person to lead off on this, given your background in public health and geospatial. So geospatial, especially with the ubiquity of location services on phones and things like that, it's really kind of intersecting with personal privacy and issues like that. And so I'm curious, with all this advanced technology that's being applied for geospatial analysis and AI and everything that's already been discussed elsewhere in the panel so far, you know, how you think the industry, the geospatial vertical, should be approaching ethical concerns. How do we begin fusing all this stuff together in a way that is ethical and it doesn't run afoul of these issues?
Wow, this actually is the perfect question for me. A couple weeks ago, I was at the American Public Health Association, actually doing a talk on ethics and governance for large multimodal models and how they're used in public health. And so the WHO actually helped publish an update earlier this year. So that's a resource for folks who are tuning in just to be aware of that there is a publication on ethics and governance for artificial intelligence and health, where they brought together different stakeholders throughout the world with AI backgrounds and health to kind of touch on these ethical components. But basically, ethics is so intertwined with trust. And so when you talked about how the industry can evolve, the key word is industry, right? Because a lot of the stuff is happening, as I noted, and why I'm working on this entrepreneurial venture is that so many things are happening in silos. And so that's why it's really tricky for industry stakeholders to be on the same page. So even during my talk, I kind of like to speak in very basic terms because a lot of health professionals were trained clinically. We're trained in a different way of thinking. So I kind of liken AI and some of these emerging technologies to like a robot kid. So I'm like, basically, what you teach the kid is what you're going to get, essentially, right? And so, like ethics, right? Like if you teach a kid to do things ethically, it will produce like ethical, like, behaviors and things of that nature, and vice versa with others. But if you have parents or you have different inputs that are telling you a different message, it becomes very confusing. And that's why I think the collaborative piece is something that I'm very interested in. But the WHO broke it down, I think, into 6 main categories, if I remember. One was about protecting autonomy. That's one thing that's really important to consider ethically, ensuring inclusiveness and equity when it comes to data, making sure that there's responsibility and accountability throughout the whole value chain of the creation of various, technological tools, ensuring that there's like sustainability and practices, right? Because, at least in the example of AI, what I was talking about then, there's a large environmental impact and impacts in different neighborhoods with the build of different data warehouses, and then transparency, explainability, all those kind of words that we might hear in the tech space, just introducing my health peers to some of the terms that you may hear more traditionally in technical spaces. But at the end of the day, for the industry that I'm really focused on is about promoting like the health and well-being and the safety and the best for the public interest. So yeah, it boils down to trust and getting on the same page and making sure we all have that same definition of what we're willing to move forward with in that space. So I don't want to cannibalize. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Anyone else want to? Brian, you just came off.
I have a couple points here. I think the interesting thing is, and it seems like every generation past us Gen Xers like to basically post everything online. So they'll post pictures, they'll leave the location tags in it. And I think we're at the age now where even if you try to release anonymized data for research purposes, I think it's that much easier now to de-anonymize that data. Because, say I record GPS tracks of vehicles. Well, I can go see where the vehicle is. I can go look that up. And I can see who's checked in where. I can go look for photos. And suddenly I've de-anonymized the different things like that. I think there's also going to be ethically, I think there's going to be a disparity in things. I think we're going to have more surveillance in areas that aren't necessarily as well off, on the social economic level. So we will end up with more data in those areas than we are in say, the bit more to-do neighborhoods. So I think there's going to be ethical issues there of like, okay, well, how useful is that data then? Are we making decisions based on data where mainly we have a bias just because where we have placed the sensors? Just various issues like that. But I think the main thing is now that every one of us is a sensor, I think people really should be aware now that pretty much somebody knows where you are at any given point in time. Then that brings up the questions: do the phone companies have a right to keep that data and sell the data? Does Apple and Google have the right to take our location data and sell it? Who owns that data? So I think there's a lot of issues that still need to be sorted out on that.
Okay. All right, well, thank you. That makes sense. Sorry. Anyone else want to chime in on this one? If not, we will move on to the next question. All right. So, actually, Brian, since you had a head of steam, I know a good bit about the work you've been doing recently, and so I want to ask you the same question I asked Dave Cook last time. What are the unique challenges you see geospatial bringing to machine learning and AI? To that space. Is spatial special over there too?
I think some of the challenges are, for example, if you look at deep learning for computer vision, the lack of good quality open training sets that haven't been derived from Google Maps. Google Maps licensing is complicated. So it's good for researchers, and then the researchers put the data out. But then if I want to use it for something that's not academic, then it's basically like a poison pill if I use their data. We also have, going back to data biases, we have biases for data in, say the United States, other first world nations, but we don't have as much data that covers, say, third world countries. Especially if I'm looking at things like I want to try to train a model on a road network. Well, if I train it on, nice US roads that are paved with concrete or blacktop, things like that, that's not going to transfer very well to other parts of the world that really don't have an infrastructure. The other thing that geospatial brings is just the sheer size of the data. One of the things Bill knows this, but one of the things I did recently was try to train a model for geomorphological data to identify those types of features. And, well, A, there was hardly any data out there for those features, but B, it was a LiDAR derived, so the scene itself uncompressed was probably like a couple terabytes or so in size. So splitting that up to be able to train it is also a problem. And I think that's just going to get bigger as, now people are very interested in LiDAR point data to do things with LiDAR. People are getting more interested in SAR to do things. So I think the biggest challenge that I see is just there's a huge lack of good open training material that, kind of like we need, I know there's a data license like GPL for data, but I can't remember the name right now, but literally something like that's data sets that are curated and put out there that says, okay, I don't care if you use this for commercial or private. Here's training data for X, Y, and Z. And that's one of the biggest things that I see right now. I think another new challenge is we're having more multimodal data. I mean, newspaper articles can be a source of GIS data now. Social media is a source of GIS data. So I think there's going to be some interesting issues in generating multimodal models for things like imagery and for, social media or news article type of data.
Excellent. Thank you. Anyone else want to chime in on this one?
I can add something quick. Just, I think getting into like kind of the practitioner standpoint, I think something that I am cognizant of and worried about is just kind of the age old, like anyone can drive a car with a lot of the new kind of models. And so not really understanding what is under the hood, and that includes me. And so, I think, Brian, like a lot of what you're talking about, like variation based on geography and then moving forward with a model without really accounting for those intricacies that are all over the real world, and then having like false confidence in those outcomes. Like you're just going to have a lot more products that are kind of pushed out there that are going to be harder to trust. And I think that's a challenge that I see is just, being increasingly skeptical because you don't understand what underlying processes are and the inputs. And so, that's something I've thought about a lot.
Thanks.
And never trust academic models.
So saith Brian. All right. If there's nothing else on that topic, I'm going to move to the next one. Tom, this one's for you. Following up on one from the previous panel. There's a lot more spatial data coming at us from a lot of different directions now. What are the challenges in integrating that in a way that is useful for people who need to make sense and derive useful information out of it?
Yeah, I'd say probably two things. One technical, and then one kind of just, I don't know if logistical is the right way of describing this, but like an analogy I'd use, and I'm not as much in the space anymore, is like, the emergency response world and flood modeling, which I know New Light does a lot of work in. And just like, I think we're seeing an incredible amount of data sources that are available. I think ISI, I remember, they're just one of many that are, kind of inputs, right? And so across all these diverse data sets, you have a lot of different data quality, both in terms of attribution, accuracy, and then also like geographic extent. So one of the challenges that I think I see is just, again, having confidence in that end product, the derivative product, because all these things roll up. And if you're missing information at certain levels of your process, it either means that you need to modify your methodology or workflow to account for that. But I really feel like it's like a communication challenge of like, how do you tell people what the limitations of these analytical products are, and how does that relate back to kind of those input data products, wherever they are, right? Like raster, vector, real time. There's a lot of really neat stuff we're doing, but I think it's just kind of increasing the web, right, of the dependency web. And I think I won't get into it. I think like that's where the open specs get in, and kind of the agreements and contracts between all these pieces. But that's one part. And the second part is just technical. I think people are talking about the size of information and data, and just, I think there's a lot of really cool stuff being done with like on-demand modeling, but ultimately you have to find a way to pay things, right? So you might pay egress on cloud services. You may need to get into licensing, like Brian, you mentioned. So I just sum it up for me. It's like, it's complicated. And, I think as we build the tools, I just need to be cognizant of how complicated we want it to be and how that impacts how feasible it is.
Excellent. I appreciate that. I would love to get Michael's thoughts on this, because I know this is especially one, Esri sees a lot of data everywhere. And then, of course, with your focus in public safety, we know this is that data fusion has been a long-standing issue in that vertical. So I'd love to hear what you have to say about this.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, in public safety, you're right. We get spatial data from all sorts of sources, like 911 call centers and license plate readers and gunshot detection systems, weather data, CAD, RMS, and they're coming from all different manufacturers from all over the place. And there's really no common data coming from them. So the big challenge is just bringing all that data together into, a cohesive system because of the different formats and standards that they're using. So, thankfully, NGIS platforms, interoperability standards, and cloud-based solutions they're making it a little bit easier to integrate the data. Our ArcGIS solution can help fuse disparate data sets into dashboards and help give responders accurate, actionable insights. But it's a challenge every day that we face whenever we meet with a fire department or a police department or emergency management. Just a number of sensor related data sets and reporting mechanisms just make it very, very difficult to bring that all in.
Yeah, I mean, Esri being a product company, I know that every product company would love to have a product that they could just put in front of customers with a problem and go, this does it for you.
Right.
This doesn't seem like something that's easily productizable, and that I have to imagine that this continues to vex you in terms of that tendency. And I'm curious about, do you see that getting any easier, or is this just the state of this kind of thing?
You know what? If the data source has an API, more likely than not, our engineers can figure out a way to bring it in. But that takes time and that takes money, right? And to do that, especially in the public safety world where budgets are tight, and the first police department that comes to us with XYZ data that's never been looked at before by us, they're the ones that kind of have to foot the bill for us to figure it out. And then the police departments on down the line, they kind of reap the benefits of that, I guess, right? But because there's just no, single data format, everything's coming in different. I mean, we look at desktop intelligence solutions, and we were talking about this just yesterday, to look at, interrogate cell phone data. Every cell phone company is going to give it to us in a different format. And that's just cell phones, right? So we need to figure out how to bring that in, make sense of it all, and get that end product, no matter who the phone provider is.
An entirely different space, but I ran into that when I was dealing with medical data from different diabetes devices, because there's no standardization. Right. And I think sometimes we forget how much work the OGC has saved us as an industry with just the standards they put. Like we can count on spatial data to meet certain baseline specs because of that other verticals just don't even think about.
Right.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. So I think we got a couple more minutes. So my next question, if there's nothing else on that topic, I want to move on to the next question. I have one I'd like to Dave Stepp to lead off with.
I did want to throw something in real quick, Bill, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I think, this would also be kind of advice to people starting out in GIS, but even though there are standards, don't expect everything to actually follow those. Like just the other day, I was helping a client, and somebody was putting out what they called valid GeoJSON, but whether or not you do the left-handed rule or right-handed rule, you go through connected nodes for a polygon. You don't just put points in any order that you feel like. And I think that's one of the interesting places I think AI could really start to help GIS, because I think, I'm old, so I still call it conflation, but spatial conflation we solved pretty good, but I think metadata conflation is really going to be the next frontier, not just dealing with different file formats, but the information encoded in those formats. Like, is it a house? Is it a business? What's the name of the business? That type of stuff, I think, is really going to be the big problem that we have, because everyone's got data, everyone stores it in different formats. Some like the more the social type data sets, they don't really want to constrain people to things like schemas. So I think that's where, kind of the next big issue is going to come from.
Okay, that's a good point. So Dave, I have a question for you. I think given your background at Verizon, you probably get us going pretty well on this one. I asked this one at the previous panel. I'm going to start with you on this one. What do you think the next big disruptor is that's not named AI?
Yeah, so I'll probably answer this in a way that you'd think that a Verizon guy would answer it, right? I'd say the biggest disruptor not named AI, I'm going to say, is already here, right? And that's 5G technology, right? So specifically, I'd like to dive into 5G ultra wideband technology. So the speeds that we're seeing in today's marketplace, we're talking about gigabit speeds, we're no longer in the megabit space, right? So I think just the speeds uplink, downlink, the latency that's behind that, which is ultra low. Just the ability to send and receive large files, while on the move, wherever, whenever, whether it's an on-prem someplace on-prem, whether it's in the cloud, the ability to access 5G networks, and then how that ties back into the geospatial space is my answer to that question.
Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate that. Anyone else want to chime in on this one and get imaginative?
Sure, I'll chime in real quick. And of course, I'm coming from this, or from my perspective, I'm coming at this from what I know, which is impact. And so from my perspective, the next big disruptor is real-time and context-aware insights that are powered by geospatial data. So we're moving toward platforms that don't just give you data, but they integrate it seamlessly into workflows. And it provides actionable intelligence in the moment. So with impact, it combines, that real-time hazard data with insights on vulnerable populations to prioritize emergency responses. So the game changer here isn't just the data. It's the ability to integrate these insights into decision-making processes where every second counts, not at the end of the day, not at the end of the week, not at the end of the month, but right now as events are unfolding. And, we're not just talking about another tool, we're talking about decision support systems. So this is something that we already have proof of concept of, and we've seen it work in the community. And I think that's what Impact is really designed to do. I also do want to just circle back real quick on the privacy and ethical issues that you brought up at the beginning of the panel. What I think is really important here that Impact has adopted is a privacy by design principle or model. So we're ensuring that every layer of our decision support system considers data security and ethical implications from inception. So, these considerations, this privacy by design model needs to be adopted throughout the industry, where those ethical considerations are baked in from the start and not added later.
All right, excellent. Okay, thank you. And you're going to start our lightning round because we're getting close here. So Kari, lightning round. Quick answer: advice to emerging geospatial professional.
So this is going to come from my own experience. My own journey building something like Impact requires a wide range of skills: data science, software engineering, research, policy, et cetera, et cetera. My path into this field was not direct, and for much of my career, I worked in something totally different. But what I've learned in the geospatial field is that it thrives on diversity. So not just in data sets, but also in perspectives. And this field needs people from all walks of life because it intersects with so many areas: your climate change, disaster response, urban planning, et cetera. So my advice is to do what makes you happy and what makes a change in the community. And I can almost guarantee that you'll be able to find that in geospatial.
Excellent. Thank you. Michael, lightning round, go.
Specific to public safety, I say focus on mastering the basics of GIS, explore real world applications like emergency response and crime analysis, really understand how to apply GIS to solve those real world problems, and that'll help set you apart. I would recommend they build their skills in data science and programming, emerging technologies. Try to stay ahead of the curve, and don't forget the network. I mean, things like this are so important. Things like the shameless plug, but the Esri user conference, where you've got tens of thousands of GIS professionals from around the world there. Network, and learn from one another. You just never know what you're going to take away and how you can apply it in your field.
Excellent. Tom, lightning round, your turn.
All right. So I think similar to what Michael just mentioned, like I would recommend learning how to think spatially and think critically, like mindset over tools. You can always learn technology comes and goes, but how to approach problems is, I think, what I've seen within the industry to make most people really successful is being able to apply tools based on just knowledge. And I can't remember who mentioned it earlier, but taking the time to understand the basics and asking questions, I think, is incredibly underrated. Like, be okay with not understanding things. And I think like leaning on other people to just straight up learn is like, no matter where you are in your career, just always be curious. And I think that will pan out well for you.
I am grossly over time here, so I'm gonna apologize to Brian and Dave for not giving me a chance to chime in. But Jing, I'm going to give you the opportunity to close us out on the lightning round.
Oh, okay. I'll go fast then. I would have to say know yourself and what you're trying to make happen, because geospatial technology is an incredibly powerful tool, but you are the user. So that question, if I were to do an add-on for what do you think is the next big disruptor not named AI, it's you. Whatever your name is, it's who is the next big disruptor, not named AI, and it's you, because you're using geospatial as part of your strategy moving forward. So know yourself and what you're trying to accomplish, and use maps and geospatial data to make it happen. So that's my response.
Thank you, and thanks to everyone for doing this. It was a great discussion.